Yes.
Okay. Now I've seen a number of videos. You're an atheist, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they've had a number of people request that I have a conversation with you. Would you like to tell us why you're an atheist?
You think so?
Actually, I'm just kind of listening while I work.
It's already disingenuous. Yeah, I think so. What
No.
the hell?
I mean, you're a talking head on all these YouTube shows all the time, proudly proclaiming you're an atheist. Surely you could spare us a couple of minutes and tell us why there's no God.
I mean, I'm not much into philosophy.
Are you not a regular talking head on these atheist chat shows?
I mean, I do go on a lot of shows that are atheists.
Yeah, and you're a fairly intelligent, educated man, and you've regularly proclaiming you're an atheist. So how is it that there's no God?
Yeah, I don't really know that I'm qualified to make that determination.
Wait a minute. Then
But
why
you,
do you go? Why do you go onto all these talking head shows proclaiming you're an atheist, and having camaraderie with all these other people proclaiming that they're atheists? The central theme of these is, you're atheists, right?
Oh, because I don't believe there's a deity.
Okay. So is that on rational grounds, or do you just irrationally deny there's a God?
so you just go on the show just to express that you don't believe. That's it.
See, because I want
Well,
to talk with you, because I've listened to you. You seem like an intelligent guy. It's clearly you're quite highly educated, and I deal with a lot of knuckle dragging troglodyte atheists who are just incompetent. So why do you believe there is no God?
um, I mean, probably most of it has to deal with um, the fact that I deal a lot in history of ancient Mesopotamia and the ancient Near East, and where the Hebrew Bible comes from, and um, so looking at how uh, religion developed in the ancient world, and looking at how the Hebrew Bible developed in the religion of Judaism and ultimately Christianity, and just given what I know about Mesopotamian religion and Sumerian and Akkadian, that it just seems like this is another ancient Near Eastern religious development. I guess for the same reason that I don't believe in Enki or Enlil or any of the other Mesopotamian deities or religions, or Ugaritic, or
Hmm.
This is
I,
putting me to
Well, that
sleep.
that that's the genetic fallacy.
When you say the Hebrew Bible, can you be specific?
Yeah, Bruce, please do not interfere. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. So that's the genetic fallacy. Okay. Are you aware of that?
I think, yeah. So like, because again, philosophy is not really my thing, but is it because like where it came from? Then if I don't agree
It
with
may
where it
it,
came
it
from,
it may be the case that somebody's faulty reasoning by which they concluded X, um, their reasoning might be faulty, but it doesn't follow from that X is false. Kai
oh,
Nielsen,
sure,
the
yeah,
famous
no, I
atheist
agree.
author, wrote, "The reasons for God may fail, but it still may be the case that God exists."
Oh, sure, yeah, I agree.
Okay, so you believe that there is no ultimate mind that is the source of all possibility of what is, can be, or cannot be. So other than your appeal to the genetic fallacy that people use wrong reasoning to come to the conclusion that God exists, okay, how is it that there is no ultimate creator God?
I mean, I
Or is your
guess to be sorry, good.
no? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I don't know that there is no deity. Like, I don't know that there is no God. Um,
I didn't ask you that. I
I
said,
suppose,
why do you believe it?
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, as far as my experience with other religions of the ancient Near East, they're not convincing to me either.
Okay.
And because of what I know about where the Hebrew Bible comes from, and its connections to the ancient Near East, what seems most reasonable to me is that it's
Okay.
born out of this ancient Near
Do
Eastern
you
context.
do you positively believe that God is the necessary precondition of all facts that are not God? Do you believe that?
No.
Okay, so then you believe that facts are independent of God.
Yeah,
Good.
that sounds right.
Good. Well, that logically commits you to the denial of the existence of God. So you do deny God exists. So how is it that God doesn't exist?
Yeah, I guess I don't have a problem with denying that God exists. I think that seems like that makes sense.
Do you have rational
Um,
grounds why there is no God?
it's probably more of an inductive conclusion that I've made than like a deductive one.
Do you have rational grounds why there is no God?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you're asking. You're asking me to like prove it?
You've decided you have adopted a universal negative, which is that all facts do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God. How did you determine at that universal negative?
Sorry, I'm trying to piece together what you're asking. How have I made a positive? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying that implicitly I've made that a positive
Are you trying to
determination.
represent that your atheism is not the denial of the existence of God, but that you're somehow non-committal about the existence of God?
Um, I guess I've never thought about it in those terms. I would say that if you ask me, do I believe that a God exists? No.
Hello?
Yep, you're back.
Am I still on?
Okay, I'm back. It crashed on me.
Oh, okay. I thought it was me.
Okay, so
It crashed on me too.
okay,
Yeah,
so
everyone.
do you recognize that either your position is the denial of the existence of God, or as commonly is done among atheists, you make a claim that you're just simply non-committal?
Um, I guess what I would say, I mean, again, I'm okay with saying I generally don't think about it in terms of any God. Um, although if I think about it in that sense, probably that's the case. Yeah.
So
Um,
you either recognize your position is the denial of the existence of God, or you're claiming a kind of neutrality, non-committal. Okay, which is your position?
yeah. I'm okay. Yeah, I'd say my position is that I would be okay saying that there are no gods. I don't know that, right?
Okay,
But
okay.
I'd be okay with
Do you believe that
believing
there
it.
is no God on rational grounds, or do you just arbitrarily and irrationally assert that there's no God?
Um, I mean, I guess if it's rational to say that, uh,
Wow, it just crashed on me again.
Same.
Discord crashing?
I wonder if we're getting DOS. People don't like this conversation.
You can't get DDoS on a particular server. A server is hosted,
So,
multiple servers is hosted on one
Right.
unit.
Right, but there are exploits that are available all the time.
No, they're actually updating a bunch of stuff on Discord. So it's just them updating their servers. It's gonna be like this for a while.
Okay, so your
sorry,
position is
Oh, I
that
see.
there is no God. So it is. Do you have rational grounds that there is no God?
I don't know if I understand specifically what you're asking. So, do you want me to give you? Do you want me to give you my grounds?
Your position is that. Oh, here we go again.
Just me, or is this the?
No, it's
Is
Discord.
this the?
It's happening for everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Wow,
Keep looking at my phone,
this is
thinking I'm doing something.
pretty cool. It's gonna keep happening a couple more times.
Okay, so what's your
Say
rational
that,
basis that there is no God?
Given what I know about, and I mean, this is all very general, I suppose, thinking about it this way, but given what I know about the world and the way that it works, and what I know about, in particular, cultures and religions from the ancient Near East, where, again, the Hebrew Bible sort of comes from.
Well, setting aside people's faulty reasoning in the past, okay, what I'd like to know for you right now, why is it that there's no God?
So I guess that's what I was trying to say, was the way that I come at this is to say that for the same reason that I think, I'm not trying to be, I don't know, simplistic or whatever, but for the same reason that I think that there's a rational reason that the Mesopotamian pantheon developed, that similar circumstances and events transpired to bring about the development of
Are the Mesopotamian pantheon, are they ultimate?
ultimate. I don't
Did
know
they
that
be,
they would have
did,
thought
did they
about them in
did
that
they
sense.
did they begin to exist? Are they the source of all possibility of what is, can be, or cannot be?
That's a good question. You mean from how they would have considered them?
Yeah, because the gods of the ancient world, which obviously you have great expertise in, which I don't,
Well,
none of these gods are ultimate. Okay, what I'm
yeah,
talking about is the God where God is ultimate, where what is eternal, absolute, and is the creator is a mind and is the source of all possibility. Your position is that does not exist. I'd like to know what your rational grounds for that, other than the fact that you believe that people have used faulty reasoning to come to believe in other gods. Okay,
I
because
see.
it doesn't follow from that there's no God, because people
No, I
have.
agree. I agree. And I guess what I would say is I mean, I'm sure this is all very common and low level for what I'm getting ready to say for you guys, because you seem to talk about philosophy quite a bit more than obviously than I do. But like I would obviously draw a distinction between what I believe to be the case and what I know to be the case.
Okay,
So,
you believe there is no God. Why do you
right.
have rational grounds for that belief?
I guess what I would say is because I don't see um, a reason to believe that a deity exists.
Okay, do you have a reason to believe that what is ultimate is impersonal and governs all possibility? Do you have a reason to
Hmm.
believe that?
Something that's ultimate and impersonal.
Yeah, you will either believe that something
Yeah,
is ultimate, dictating all possibility, or you'll reject the notion that anything is ultimate at all,
yeah. I mean,
determining
I
what
get.
it.
Sorry.
Okay, so do you have a reason to believe that what's fundamental to reality, the ground of all being, is impersonal? Do you have a reason for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the only thing that I'd be able to say to it would be like and again, I hope I'm using the term correctly, but an inductive approach to that, where I would say, in the same way that people in the fourth millennium thought that the storm was a deity and that the sun was its own
No.
deity.
So you don't. So you don't have a reason for that which is ultimate is impersonal. Then you just adopt it arbitrarily.
Arbitrarily. I don't think so. I mean, again, I
Okay.
think I'm doing it based on a pattern that I see.
Okay.
I mean,
You say you
again,
don't have a
like,
reason to believe in God. That's the equivalent of saying that all the facts you're acquainted with do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God. Okay.
okay.
Now, do you have grounds for that?
Um,
How did you determine that all the facts that you're acquainted with do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God? How did you decide on that, other than questioning people's faulty reasoning in the past?
yeah, I don't know if it's. Sorry, I'm trying to understand exactly
You've
how you're wording
determined
this.
that all the facts that you're acquainted with do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God as the precondition of all facts. So how did you determine that?
It sounds like what you're asking, and just correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like what you're asking is, how do I know that to be the
No, I
case?
didn't ask you that. I said, why do you believe it?
Okay. Well, if it's why do I believe it, then again, I think it's from this sort of inductive approach to it, where it doesn't
So
seem like. Sorry.
so induction can tell you what then is ultimate and that it's not God?
I don't think it tells me with any sort of
Induction is just appealing to various facts around you and
right.
then trying
Yes.
to derive general or universal principles.
Yes.
What is ultimate will be, no pun intended, the ultimate universal. Okay?
Right.
So when you say you use induction, you're just deciding that all the facts around you do not derive from God as the ultimate universal. How did you determine that?
Oh, I see. I think I see. I guess the way that I would answer that would be sort of to draw something analogous to it, in that, um, again, it's sort of general, but because uh, uh, the storm and the sun and all these things were considered to be deities, and then as it turns out,
You're just appealing to your opening line of reasoning, which is the genetic fallacy.
sure. I don't think that I could prove
Setting
that.
aside other people's faulty reasoning, you have decided that all the facts around you do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God as the precondition of all facts. How did you decide on that? Excluding people's faulty reasoning, how did you decide upon that?
I'm trying to understand what you mean by utilizing people's faulty reasoning.
You keep on going back to saying, well, these people developed, they came up with believing with these gods in an erroneous fashion. Well, so what? Okay, that's the genetic fallacy. What I want to know from you right now, you've decided that all the facts around you, okay, do not necessitate referencing what is ultimate and that it's a mind, God. How did you reason to that?
Because it doesn't, if I'm answering it, I might not be, but I'm trying, because it seems like there's no need for it.
You're restating the same claim in different words.
Sorry.
When I say you've
I'm
decided that all the facts around you do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God.
Yes.
So when you say there's no need to do it, you're just simply restating the same position.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a different way to come at it then. I don't know that I can.
Because I watch a lot of these atheist talking head shows. I watch a lot of the so-called deconversion shows.
Mhm.
I'm not hearing from any of the YouTube atheists who I either listen to on a regular basis, the shows that you hang out on,
Mhm.
or the very few of them that are willing to have an interaction with myself. I'm not hearing from any of them in a concrete way why there is no God, other than this feigned, oh, I'm unconvinced.
Yeah, maybe that's, I'm just sort of guessing here, but maybe that's why the approach is more of a, I don't know, what is it that said, like a lack of belief?
That's an ambiguity.
bec-
Everyone
yeah.
everyone who denies the existence of God lacks belief in God. Okay,
Sure. Yeah.
but
No, I
your
agree.
position is not a mere absence of belief. Your position is there is no God.
Yeah, I do believe that. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. So is that rationally grounded or is it irrational?
I, unless there's a specific use of the word rational here that I'm unaware of, which is entirely
Do you,
possible.
do you do you have a reason to believe there is no God?
Yeah, and I feel like if I say it again, it's probably going to be saying the same thing. So I don't I don't want
Well,
to.
you mean the genetic fallacy?
Yeah, I don't know that. I would
That's
necessarily
a
consider it to be
that,
that, but
that's a genetic fallacy. All these people in the times past, these ignorant Slavs, not that you said that, but
no,
these
definitely not.
people, these people, and maybe I shouldn't use those terms, but these people, they just came up with these ideas for a phenomenon controlling the physical world. Okay, so they might be wrong. The point is, that doesn't get you to your position that there's no God.
Yeah, and I think so. I feel like we're talking about maybe two different things, and maybe we're not. Maybe I'm just missing it. That's entirely possible. Um, I think that I would say that um, most of what drives me to disbelieve in the divine is my experience with, and when I say experience, I mean that more than just like emotional experience, I mean like intellectual, literary, whatever, with the religions, the concrete religions like Christianity, like, those that you see in the ancient Near East. So, like, if this is why I made the statement at the beginning when you asked me if I'm an atheist, I said, I think so. What I mean by that is, I certainly don't know that there is no God out there ever. I don't know how I'd possibly know that.
But you believe there's no
Um,
God.
yeah, I don't. I haven't seen. So the deities that I've interacted with,
So
the deities that I've.
why do you believe there's no God?
Yeah, that's why I say I think it's inductive. So in the sense that,
Yeah, but
um,
that doesn't. You've said that already. Okay, so that's the
right.
equivalent of saying that all the facts around you do not necessitate referencing the necessity of God. Okay, so how'd you determine that facts are independent of God? Do facts derive from something else that you believe is ultimate that's not God?
It's that's sort of like that sounds like a question that's probably way over my
The only
area of expertise.
the only way that you could determine that facts are unrelated to God is that you would first have to determine there's no God. Because
Yeah,
if you don't first determine that there is no God, then you could not ground that facts don't necessitate referencing God, could you?
yeah. See, this is where I feel like maybe I'm. This is why I'm trying to use the word believe, because determine seems like it's a knowledge. It seems like it's more of a knowledge claim. Maybe it's not, but it seems like
Well,
it is.
well, the difference between knowledge and belief is just sometimes a fine line and a matter of emphasis. Because
Sure.
rarely do people have beliefs that have no warrant or justification whatsoever, and we reserve the word knowledge for the highest amount of warrant or justification, whereas belief is for lower or weaker warrant or justification. So
Yeah,
the
like I
point,
guess.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
yeah. Okay. I was just going to say like this, like with something like, oh boy, let's see if I can dig back into my college philosophy. Who was it? Was it David Hume that had the problem of induction? Am I getting that right? Um, I
So
think that's who it was. Somebody will correct me. I'm sure it
so when
is.
you say you use induction, okay, you couldn't use induction to falsify God, because you
Oh
would have
yeah,
to
I
you would
agree.
so you first offered the genetic fallacy. The second line of reason is induction, okay, but you couldn't use induction to show that there's no relationship between facts and God unless you first determined that God does not exist.
Right. That's why I say it sounds like we're like moving into the realm of proof, and I certainly don't have anything like that.
So your God denialism then is irrational.
Maybe just for my sake, how when you're using the term irrational, what do you mean?
Means that you have no reason for that belief.
I think I do have. Let me say it this way: in the same, it's the same way that I have reason that the sun will come up tomorrow. I
I'm not
like I
I'm not understanding your point. Okay.
like it. If I'm remembering it, it wasn't that like David Hume's big thing. Like you have no rational reason to conclude that the sun will come up tomorrow. And am I totally
Um,
embarrassing myself here? Isn't that what he said?
no. I mean, um, I think that was his position, but as a
Yeah,
Christian, I would disagree with him.
sure. Yeah. No, right from that, but from I guess from my
Yeah.
position or from my worldview
Well, what I
or
want to know is
whatever.
you've offered two lines of reasoning why there is no God. Okay, you made an appeal to how the beliefs in gods developed in Mesopotamia. Okay, that turned out to be the genetic fallacy. Then you made an appeal to induction, which is also a fallacy because in order to determine that all facts collectively don't indicate a universal or general principle, namely God, you would first have to determine God does not exist in order to rationally conclude there is no God. So appealing to induction doesn't get you there.
So if we're using rational in the same way that David Hume is using it, then I agree. Like if, and I'm, again, we're so far outside of my field talking about philosophy, but
You're on the talking head atheist shows all the time, okay? As an outspoken atheist, what I want to know from you, other than your first two lines of reasonings, which have turned out to be a fallacy in all due respect, I want to
that's
know
fine.
why you believe there is no God. Because it's my position that atheists, both educated and uneducated alike, are motivated by a prime directive. They do not want there to be a God, so they collect for themselves all sorts of cliches, slogans, and catchphrases that they think are rationales, but in fact they're not. So if that's
Well,
not the case with you, if
yeah.
your God denialism is not because you don't want there to be a God and you're just collecting atheist cliches, what is your reason why there is no God?
Yes. I mean, just to sort of maybe talk to that for a second, like I was an evangelical Christian for 26 years. I pastored a church out in Virginia. And when I went to Johns Hopkins, my first year there studying this, ancient Mesopotamian literary
And
texts,
didn't you go to Capital Bible Seminary?
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
Studied under Todd Beale, yeah, and Mark
that's
Meyer.
a yeah, that's a good seminary.
Yeah, they they drilled the languages into me. I had a lot of fun there. Um,
Okay, so your reason that there is no God is
yeah, sorry. I was just going to say that. Sorry, because you asked about the. Um, do I want am I one of those that wants there to be no God?
yeah.
Absolutely not.
Okay,
I
then
mean, I
what's your
was.
reason? Then what's your reason that's not fallacious? That there's no God.
Um, sorry, I guess I'm getting hung up on fallacious, but I mean, so the reason that I determined uh, that my belief in the God of the Bible. Um,
I didn't mention the God of the Bible. We're talking about your atheism.
no, I'm trying to walk through the process. Um, was that it didn't hold, right? Um, and so I mean, I left Christianity kicking and screaming. But then it sort of broadened to, well, I don't the same reasons that I don't think that Christianity stands up as a an accurate representation of reality or whatever. Uh,
Well,
you know, it
how would you? Okay, so the Christian worldview, what you're just saying is simply not true, right?
oh, sorry, the Christian worldview is not true. Yeah, I think that's the
Okay,
case. Yeah.
okay. And how did you determine that?
Um, yes, I mean it's probably a longer conversation.
Yeah, because you
Um,
just wrote a book, The Atheist Guide to the Old Testament, right? So you
mhm.
must have
Atheist Handbook. Yeah.
so you must have a good reason why Christianity as a worldview is categorically false. What would that be?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of multivaried. Uh, so, for example, the things that I was brought up to understand as God being providing prophetic oracles in the in the Hebrew Bible that come about in the New Testament, and um, Moses being the author of the Pentateuch, and this being a divinely inspired book that was inerrant. Those sorts of things are incredibly problematic. And
What's problematic about the Bible? Why would any proposition whatsoever be off limits if the Christian worldview is false? Or excuse me, we shouldn't say false, because outside the Christian worldview, how could you determine that any proposition is off limits? What ultimately would make any proposition off limits?
Would make any proposition off limits.
Yeah.
I don't know that I understand.
Yeah. Well, if somebody presents to me something as a Christian to me, I say, no, I don't believe that, because that's inconsistent with what God has revealed. It's my Christian worldview, and the ultimacy there in the God of the Bible, which is the final court of appeal, which mitigates against a certain proposition. But if you object to certain propositions in this world, like it's superstitious to think that walking under a ladder is going to give you bad luck, or that there are certain errors in the Bible, what would ultimately and fundamentally ground that any proposition, including certain statements in the Bible, would be off limits?
Oh, you mean like why would like a contradiction be problematic or something like that?
Yeah, if you say, this verse in the Old Testament is off limits, and this verse in the Quran is off limits, and somebody walking under a ladder, it is off. It would, being superstitious, bad luck from that would be off limit. Why would any in a not Christian worldview, why would any proposition be off limits ultimately?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have the expertise to answer it well.
So then you have no grounds to object to any propositions from the Bible, then, do you?
Let me try to be clear. It sounds like a similar question to, I hate to keep going back to it, but it's the only thing I can think of at the moment. But like the problem with induction, like I don't have a good answer for the problem with induction.
You think that certain things in the Bible are problematic and consequently false. But in your not Christian worldview, there's no final court of appeal or ultimate state which dictates what is, can be, or cannot be to make any proposition off limits.
I mean, I don't know that there isn't one. I just don't know that I know what it is.
Okay, if you don't know what it is, then how can you say any proposition is off limits, even including questioning the Old or New Testament?
I guess it would be based on, and I'm sure I'm saying things that you've heard before, so forgive me, but I suspect it's based on things like logic and reason.
Is there something that ultimately exists that makes what is, can be, or cannot be, including logic?
I'm not sure.
So you're using "I'm not sure" as an attack against the Bible?
I don't think I would say it that way.
Well, wait a minute. You just wrote a book called An Atheist Guide to the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. And even though we're not agreeing and I'm, hitting you with hard questions, maybe I could snag an electronic copy of your book in my DMs.
I'd be happy to send you one. Sure. Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to send. I can send you a PDF of it.
I'd like to read that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I guess what I would
say I'm getting a plug-in for your book.
No, I appreciate that. I think what I would say, like it's, you're probably right about, like I don't know. Again, anybody like you or anybody else listening to me, this is completely not my field. So
okay, well let's talk about your field. Let's talk about your field. Okay, you wrote a book called The Atheist Guide to the Old Testament, which I haven't had a chance to read through, and I look forward to reading it. Okay, but you obviously in that book call into question certain propositions that are either wrong or fallacious or simply are off limits for whatever reason. So in your worldview, what makes any proposition off limit, including statements in the Bible?
Yeah, I mean, I think the furthest I'd be able to, quote unquote, go back for me anyway, with my training in philosophy, which is none, would be, to say, like, I don't know, the laws of logic or something. Like, you can't have.
The laws of logic don't stand in causal relations, making what is, can be, or cannot be, other than it just stipulates that an entity is what it is in a time index and it cannot equal or coexist with its negation. But beyond that, the laws of logic don't make what things are or can be or cannot be.
Oh, sure. Like they're descriptive. They're not prescriptive.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just
Oh no, I agree. I
it's
guess
just
what I'm
that in a
saying is
given
that,
time index, an apple cannot be not an apple, but the laws of logic don't dictate the properties of the
right.
apple.
Yeah, and I guess in the same way, this is just so I'm mirroring you, so I understand.
So
I think
so
we
so
agree on
so
this.
so you're evaluating the Bible, and you're trying to lead people to believe that this is not an inerrant book. This book is not inspired by God because X, Y, and Z is problematic and is to be considered wrong or false or erroneous. Well, what in your worldview that dictates that anything is erroneous?
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I think my position would be that I think the fundamentalist, or maybe more conservative evangelical interpretations of the biblical text have problems, right? So inerrancy, inspiration. I don't think that necessitates that Christianity is wrong. I think that it's wrong, but I don't, like, my wife is a Christian, so I don't think that it necessitates that.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I don't think that my wife is irrational in any way in holding to her Christian faith. I don't think that it's correct. Not
Um,
her. I don't, obviously I
so
don't think
so
that
so you so
hers
you
is
think
correct.
so when you say, well, then you believe that the Christian worldview is false.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, then what is your worldview that would falsify it?
Hmm. What is my worldview that would falsify it? I don't know that I know a good answer to that.
Well, then you can't hold that Christianity is false, can you?
Um, think if I understand what you're asking, I think probably I operate in the same way that you could. It sounds like you could say to me, and I think you could, and you'd be justified in saying it, that I don't have a rational reason to believe that the sun will come up tomorrow, or, like, I can't justify that.
Does your
And I think in
world
this,
Okay, does your worldview provide background information in order for you to declare that anything is erroneous?
um, I think maybe in the sense that it doesn't, if I'm using this correctly, it doesn't cohere with reality as I see it, as I
Okay.
experience it.
Yeah, reality would equal your worldview. What is fundamentally your worldview
Hmm.
that would dictate what could not be and is erroneous?
Yeah, I don't know a good answer to that other than,
So you
um,
wrote a whole book criticizing the Old Testament and that certain things in the Old Testament are erroneous, but your worldview doesn't provide a rationale to declaring things are erroneous?
oh, I'm sure that it does. It doesn't mean that I know
Oh,
what it is.
well, then if it does, then how did you arrive at that?
Does How did I arrive at it?
Yeah, what is your worldview and how does it provide for determining what is erroneous versus not?
Um, if something contradicts is probably a good example.
Contradicts what?
Um, so maybe a good example would be Genesis 37,
What
right? The
about it?
story of Joseph. Like,
What
how
about
does
it?
Joseph get down? How does Joseph get down to Egypt? Right. That's problematic in the text if you're viewing it from, like, a single authorship position. If you think that,
Why, why
not
would
you,
that?
but if a person,
Why is it that if I don't have an answer to a question, how does it make something false? For example, did you know that um, we have eyewitnesses of the sinking of the Titanic. Some of them said they saw the Titanic split in half. Others said that they did not see it split in half. Does that mean the Titanic didn't sink?
Oh no, of course not.
Okay. So what I want to know from you is, when you're evaluating any propositions, including the Old Testament and its content, and you determine that it's erroneous, I want to know what system you're operating from that gives you the ingredients by which you can declare anything as erroneous. What is your worldview? What is it that ultimately makes anything erroneous or false? Or let me put it this way: is truth and falsity apprehensible in your world?
Like ultimately,
yeah. Is there ultimate grounds that by which we can determine that something is true or false or off limits? So, for example,
I mean, like,
yeah. So you believe certain things in the Old Testament are superstition, right?
Superstition. I don't know if I'd characterize it that way.
Are they erroneous?
It depends. I guess it depends on what we mean by that. So, for example, I don't think that 600,000 plus fighting men walked out of Egypt in the 15th century, right? But that doesn't mean that the Exodus or an Exodus event or a series of Exodus events didn't happen. And so the question is, what is the text doing? What is the text trying to say?
Is the Old Testament, is it false?
I don't know that I would characterize it that way. In the same way that I don't think I would characterize the Epic of Gilgamesh as false, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think it's...
Is that a part of your worldview?
I mean, I guess at a very basic level, it's just literary criticism, but...
Is the Epic of Gilgamesh a part of your worldview?
Part of my worldview. I don't know how you're using...
Because
I don't know how I would use the word worldview.
The Epic of Gilgamesh claims to give a creation account.
Yeah, I mean, Atrahasis does. I don't know. See, I think this is the problem, that the bigger issue that I'm trying to pull back to, or whatever, is that I think that coming to the text, any ancient text, with I don't know, like I don't want to say literalist, but an interpretive model that says, for example, okay, here's Genesis 1. Genesis 1 is relating actually how the universe was created, and so is Genesis 2. And so when there's a distinction that's drawn between those, and there are problems trying to make them align with one another, that we have to try to somehow figure out a way to make them harmonize. And I think that that's just coming to the text with presuppositions or preconceived notions that are modern, that they wouldn't have come to them with, if that makes sense.
I'm still wondering how your worldview falsifies or makes any proposition in the Old Testament erroneous. Do you have a worldview that provides for that?
I don't know that I understand how you're using worldview. I don't understand, honestly. I don't know that I've thought about.
Your worldview is whatever you conceive to be ultimate, dictating all other sub-beliefs in the world around you. It's your interconnected web of beliefs by which you interpret everything. And either in that worldview, there is something that is ultimate, the ground of all being, that dictates what is, can be, or cannot be, or you are without that within your worldview. So that when you make evaluations as to whether your hair is parted correctly, or you like the taste of this cheeseburger, or that this politician's lying, or that Moses is not the author of the Pentateuch, or whatever,
right.
I want to know, what is your worldview that allows you to make any determination of true, false, good or bad, real or erroneous? What is that worldview?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a good answer to it, except to say, things that, and it just sounds so generic when I say it, but if it comports with reality as I understand it. I don't know that that's
reality would just be another term for your worldview. So what would that be?
Yeah. I don't know that I have a good answer for that.
So you don't even know what reality is then?
I don't know what reality is.
Yeah, that's a question. Do you know what reality
Yeah,
is?
no, I'm asking it out loud for my benefit.
Yeah.
Do I know? It's that question seems a lot deeper.
You say certain things don't comport with reality. Is reality the
Sure.
same thing as your worldview?
It sounds like that's how you're defining it, and I'm fine with that.
I don't see how there to be a difference between reality and a worldview.
Yeah, I don't. That's not really a word that I use an awful lot. So that's just me not knowing how worldview is used.
Your all encompassing view of everything. Reality, all
Sure.
encompassing.
Yeah.
Worldview. Okay. So
yeah.
do
So
you,
I mean,
do you have a basic, clear worldview that will allow you grounds to evaluate whether propositions are acceptable or not acceptable?
Sure, and I feel like we're starting to go in circles a little bit here, which is probably my fault. But if something follows logic,
Yeah.
But again, I think I've said that, and it's not really helping because I'm not saying it any more clearly, which isn't helpful. Yeah, so I mean, I think, for example, when I read through the flood story and I see, uh, 40 days and I see 150 days, or if I read through the creation story and I see, man created on the sixth day at the end of creation, and then I read through Genesis 2 and I see that he's created at the beginning, and then there's a separation and woman's created.
Wait a minute.
In my mind.
Well, hold on a second. Okay, you're an educated man. Who says that the Genesis 2 is chronological?
Who says that Genesis 2 is chronological? Well, the text itself does.
Well, I've read the text. I don't see any conflict between Genesis 2 and Genesis 1, where it's very clear that we have a chronological sequencing in Genesis 1. All we have is just a recapping or a zooming in on Genesis 2. It's not necessarily chronological. And in fact, we have people who write books who do a chronological. For example, people who write political memoirs, sometimes they do a chronological sequencing, and then in following chapters, they'll just go into zooming in on certain events. Genesis 2 is not necessarily chronological.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the Hebrew actually lays it out, though, in its syntactic forms, I think actually is laying it out chronologically. But the problem is coming at it, and this is why the chapter in the book about the authorship of the Pentateuch focuses in on this, because it's not an issue for biblical scholars to look at this, because
you're dead certain that Genesis 2 is chronological.
Dead certain. Sorry, in this conversation, I'm thinking through all your words now, just so that I make sure I understand the meaning behind them.
When I read Genesis 2 in various English translation, and obviously, you know Hebrew and I don't, but when I read all of the various English translation, I don't see why it necessitates that it has to be chronological.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that the Hebrew ipso facto dictates that it's chronological?
I mean, ipso facto. Does it definitely? No. I mean, I don't know that I could prove to you.
Okay, so then it's not necessarily a contradiction. All right. Okay.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's not necessarily a contradiction. I actually say this in the book several places. Like the Genesis 37 thing. The Genesis 37. I mean, I think it's a contradiction, but it's not necessarily one. So, I mean, if you read through it, you could say, and people have, I just think it's an unnecessary stretch to say that the Midianites were sold Joseph, the brothers sold Joseph to the Midianites, who sold him to the Ishmaelites, who took them down to Egypt, who sold them back to the Midianites, who then sold them to Egypt. Like you could possibly make that work. The problem is that I think it's totally misunderstanding how the text is put together, and it strains credulity. If that makes any sense, because there's two different stories, right? There's two different versions of the Joseph story that are brought together in Genesis 37. So it's not something that I think at the end of the day you can say, aha, this is a proof, I guess, in that mathematical sense. But it's something that it is the model that best explains the data points, in my opinion.
But your worldview doesn't explain anything, does it?
I think there's a difference, and I could be wrong, but I think there's a difference between what I know about what provides for, and I think that's the word you use, provides for my worldview, and what provides for my worldview, right? So like I might not know all the details of something, but I see in practice enough that convinces me that X is the case. I don't know how that all functions. Like I don't understand the Big Bang, and science is not my thing at all. But the products of that, I think, allow me to function in a way that seems to work. To put it really roughly, I don't know, is consistent and.
Is there something in your worldview that connects all the dots, or makes
anything?
Maybe. No. Do you believe that there's anything in your world that connects the dots between particulars of existence and makes what things are, can be, or cannot be? Is there something that imposes that?
Imposes that, like as an agent would?
Yeah, because you're trying to examine the Bible, the Old Testament, and say, well, these dots connect, these dots don't connect, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that secures what is, can be, or cannot be? Is there something that does that in your worldview?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, then why are you criticizing the Bible?
I guess I'm doing it based on maybe higher level, not higher as in
Your
better,
worldview
but
doesn't. Your worldview doesn't provide for critiquing anything.
well, it seems to. I just don't know where it comes from.
What do you mean? It seems to.
I guess it works, practically speaking.
Well, in order for something to work, something has to be imposing continuity and regularity. Is the continuity and regularity real?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it seems like it is.
Okay, so then all you're just simply talking about is it seems that way. Well, you could be wrong about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no question.
Good. And you could be completely wrong about your critique about the Bible, right?
No question. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you're willing to risk your eternal destiny on it?
I don't like it. But I have to go with what I think is true.
But what you
I don't like it.
But what you think is true has no metaphysical basis. There's nowhere in your worldview to ground truth. In the Christian worldview, and you've studied theology, you went to Capital Bible Study, and you would know from the Christian worldview, truth is that which conforms to the mind of God and how He reveals it. But in your worldview, what does truth conform to? And please don't say reality.
No, yeah, I won't, because I don't know is the answer.
So when you reject Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, as Creator, you can't say what is true or false, can you? Your worldview doesn't provide for it. There's no metaphysical grounding to say what is, can be, or cannot be.
It seems like the difference between me knowing what grounds it, and I'm like what
I want
that is.
I want to know why you believe this stuff. You see, you believe that you do not need God. You do not need the God of the Bible as your Creator and Lord and Savior and Sustainer. So I want to know. I mean, because that is a grandiose statement in the course of human history. You've solved the biggest question of all human existence. You don't need God. You don't need the God of the Bible. So I want to know what you do believe, not necessarily what you know. What do you do believe that makes Jesus Christ as Lord and Creator utterly non-existent and superfluous? What do you believe ultimately about your world that makes Jesus Christ as Creator unnecessary?
I think it's probably coming at it from the other direction. So what I mean by that is, as I said before, um, the reason that I left the faith was because, um, as I began to engage with, um, for example, where the Bible finds its origins, and noticed that the Hebrew Bible seems to be another ancient Near Eastern text.
Could you be wrong about that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Did you put that in your book?
That I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's probably my motto.
But did you put it in the book?
That I could be wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So you believe that the text of the Old Testament is not the product of God inspiring holy men of the past to write down the message that He wanted. That's your position.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you know that?
See,
Logic.
the way that you're using the word "know" there.
Why do you believe that?
Okay. So why I believe it is given what I know about ancient Near Eastern um, culture and literature. The Bible fits in. The Hebrew Bible fits in very well with other ancient Near Eastern texts.
That doesn't mean it's not inspired by God.
But you're asking me why I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
But
it
doesn't follow then that it's not inspired.
Right. You're asking me why I believe it though,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is different from why it necessarily follows. And I wouldn't say that it necessarily follows. Right. I would say I believe it.
So the Bible could possibly be the inspired word of God in your view?
Yeah, sure.
Did you put that in your
I don't
book?
think it's very likely. Well, I mean, I think that's
Why is it not likely? What would make that off limits?
I feel like we're sort of circling back here.
Well, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but you know,
no.
You're an atheist talking head. You're a really educated guy, and I respect that.
I appreciate
and you've written a book, An Atheist Guide to the Old Testament, and I think that you're trying to get people to stop believing that the Bible is the Word of God, aren't you?
No. What I'm sorry. If you're asking me, do I believe that it's inspired and inerrant? I'm trying to show in the book that I don't think that that's the case. My goal is not to turn people from Christianity. Again, that's my wife's a Christian. I don't really have any interest in that. What I do think, though, and this is in the book, I think it's in the conclusion and in the introduction, definitely in the conclusion, is that we all need to start on the right footing when it comes to the Hebrew Bible. And the right footing, in my opinion.
But there is no right and wrong in your world. There's nothing that grounds it.
But I don't know that that's true.
Okay. Well, is there something that ultimately dictates what is, can be, or cannot be, and what is right, wrong, good, or bad in your world?
I'm sure that there is.
Oh, what is it?
Logic.
Well, right. I mean, I think we're sort of back to this question. And just because from like an epistemological standpoint,
well, if
just because
I just want to know if you're offering us a nothing burger, or there's some meat behind it. You know, like where's the beef? Okay.
Hold on, because
okay.
I'm gonna have to. Sorry, I don't mean to. I'm gonna have to go in about 3 minutes.
But, no, that's fine. You've been more than gracious, and I appreciate it.
No, this is actually this has actually been very nice. I guess what I would say is, if you want, send me an email to digitalhammurabi@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send you a PDF of the book.
Thank you.
we've priced it so that it's the Kindle version. I think is like $10, but that's absolutely fine. I'll send you a copy.
You know what? Don't
But
bother
if you,
sending it. You wrote the book. I'll pay for it online. Okay, don't worry about it.
oh, I appreciate that. But if
Yeah.
you want, definitely read through it. Again, you seem to know far more about philosophy
Yeah,
than I
yeah.
do. So like I
Okay.
tried
Yeah.
to participate as much as I
And
could. But
yeah, and we didn't agree on a lot of things, but I didn't call you stupid. I didn't
no,
call you names because you don't want to know it. You're conducting yourself like an adult, and
I
an
appreciate
educated
that.
person. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that I'd probably be nicer if I had more concrete answers for some of these things, but
Okay.
there's just a lot that I don't know.
Well, I just
So
wish you should just send the message to all your atheist friends on all these talking head atheist shows. I just like one of them to present a case why there's no God, because I'm not hearing from any of these talking heads an answer to that.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, because he has to go.
to me, sure. I got another minute.
I have to go too. So go ahead.
Hammurabi. What I think Darth was getting at is that you make a lot of statements with confidence, as if they could not be otherwise, and then upon being pressed, you say, "Yeah, it could be otherwise." So, why the first demeanor when the second demeanor exists?
Sure.
And
I think that's a good question. So I think it's akin to if you were to say to me, hey, is the sun going to come up tomorrow at 6:12 or whatever? And I look at my phone and I say, yeah, it'll definitely come up tomorrow at 6:12. And you say, well, metaphysically, how do you know that to be the case? Well, that's a much more stringent question, right? And so then it's like, well, I guess from an inductive standpoint, I guess I could be wrong technically about that. But maybe colloquial is a good way to say that, or based on the systems of interpretation that we utilize in our day-to-day lives. That's what I'm speaking from. But yeah, I mean, when you get to ask questions about, problems of induction and things, I mean, yeah, I'm, outside of my field, and I'm gonna have to cop to that, right? So yeah, I hope that answered it.
Can I ask a question quickly before you go?
Sure.
Just, so, what do you think about that logically, right? If you think